Subhanallah, Subhanallah, Hamdan lillah, Hamdan lillah, wa la ilaha illallah, wa la ilaha illallah, Wallahu akbar, Wallahu akbar.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Al-Hikmat TV. My name is Naima Khan Ghani and I will be your host today for the segment of Who's Who in America and the Community. This program brings to you individuals who have dedicated and committed their lives to serving Allah. They come from the local, national and international sectors of the community. Today my guest is Brother Mohammad Shakir, and I hope that he will serve as an inspiration to you and motivate you to get out there and get involved. He is the director of the Miami-Dade County Asian American Advisory Board. Welcome to the program, Mr. Shakir.
Thank you.
It certainly is a pleasure to have you. In our program, we like to discuss a little bit about your activities, but before we go into that, we like our viewers to know who you are, to get to know the person behind the scene, because usually they know all about your activities and the things that you're involved in, but they don't know that the people are real people, ordinary people doing extraordinary things. So tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from and how long have you been living in South Florida?
First of all, I don't know if I'm doing anything extraordinary.
I'm sure you are.
But I arrived here in 1970 from Pakistan, so I've lived here a little over 40 years, and came as a student, of course. But back then, most students who came actually came with their values, and immediately when we arrived here, the first thing that we worried about were the right kind of food and where we're going to do our prayers. And so therefore, the first organized Jummah prayers began in 1971. That was organized by some of us who were the students. But at that time, I think the fundamental difference between our religiosity or spirituality versus today, what I see was that we wanted to have that as a focal point for us to serve other students who were coming in. So it was a social movement more than a religious movement. Getting together for prayers on Fridays or in Sunday in the student advisor's office was a point where we got together and discussed how we can serve the needs of the other students coming in. And that's how it went on for quite some time until, of course, when the new wave of students and immigrants started arriving and they became professionals. And it progressed into what it is, the Muslim community in South Florida that we see. At that time, in 1971, when we formed the group, about 4 of us went to Covington, Georgia to attend a Muslim Student Association.
So you did this through Muslim Student Association then? That was the
convention in Covington, Georgia. When we came, we formed the first MSA in 1971.
Wow.
About 3 or 4 years fast forward, ISNA, then Muslim Student Association of North America, recognized the fact that most of the people now graduating are no longer students. So that's when ISNA created Muslim Community Association, and we slowly transitioned into what we see Muslim Community Association today.
Very good history. You know, that's really good because we had quite a few visitors on our program before who belonged to MSAs around the South Florida, the different colleges, Nova, FIU, for example. And they'd be quite interesting to know the history of MSA and how it started, because that never came up. Because I've asked them before, well, do you know how MSA evolved? And you know, it's interesting for you to tell me now how many years ago it started and how come it's evolved to such a massive organization as it is right now.
MSA was headquartered in Gary, Indiana, before they moved to Indianapolis now. But back then they were in Gary, and there were Muslim Student Association chapters all over the nation. And that was the only linking point with the central organization from the student body.
And now it's grown to such a powerful organization that really meets the need of our students on campuses now, you know.
Well, not only that, but ISNA is perhaps the largest Muslim national organization today.
They represent quite a large sector of the community in whole of the United States. So tell us, how did you happen to get involved in Islamic work?
I think we were chatting earlier for those of us who came back in those days, the training, there was really nothing different between Islamic work and your personal life. So every individual who was here as a student or as a professional they became the medium. Whatever they did, there was an Islamic aspect that they covered in their personal life, in their school life, their educational life. Often when we were asked to write our social science papers in school, the teachers were back then were interested professors. They would ask you to write something about Islam, or something about Pakistan, or something about wherever you came from. And of course, in all those homework or schoolwork or papers that you turn in, you always try to expose and manifest your background. And
So you made a connection. You tried to make a connection to your background.
Exactly, and that's why I coined the phrase back then that it was like every one of us had a one-man mission where each one of us were the ambassadors of our nations, our religion, our values, and that's how. But as I said, that started back then. Somehow I think we're losing that now. We have become more captive to institutions, and we want to sort of outsource this to our community leaders or institution leaders to do it. It's not going to work that way. Islam has never been a religious-led movement. It has always been massive, led by individuals. When I often share with our fellow Americans of other faiths, that one of the beauty of Islam is that each individual is so independent, as if he was born with the Declaration of Independence in his hand, that I am only going to be accountable for my deeds to my Allah. Please don't interfere. And I think that spirit should continue among our next generation, that we should carry it on our own, and of course be subject to the discipline by the leadership that is brought in.
And I'm glad that you mentioned that we're ambassadors, and we're all, no matter what capacity or title that we hold, we're all ambassadors here, you know, as Muslims. We're ambassadors to Islam. Now, what was your major when you came here so many years ago to study, if you don't mind me asking?
My major was business. I graduated in business. When I came, originally I wanted to do accounting and to go in CPA, but somehow although I graduated in business and did masters in communication, but instead of going in accounting side, I went more into public relations side. My first job was with the American broadcasting companies in Paramount Pictures, the theater division. So it was nothing but a high fluff job with all the movie theaters and people coming in, film stars and performers, and then I became responsible for promoting and marketing that in South Florida. So that stuck with me, and for some reason, as I said, that originally when we were involved in our student work, we were always involved with community, and we wanted to do community service. So community service and the PR or outreach and professional efforts blended in together, and then I slowly moved into that direction. And when I got my current job in 2000, I was one of the 196 candidates, and 10 months later 9/11 happened, and when 9/11 happened, my job overnight transformed into a crisis management desk instead of a PR position. And that's when I said that it was a God sent, it was destined for a Muslim to be in that position.
To be in that position, you're put in place there.
It was not my choice. Out of those 196 that I was chosen, and some the final 4 are still around and best friends of mine from other communities. They were excellent candidates. There was absolutely, I scratch my head sometimes, why me instead of 3 other.
Well, how come you were the one?
How come I was the one chosen?
Yes.
And I think the answer I got was after 9/11, because after 9/11, suddenly a floodgate opened from Washington about finding a source to communicate with the community, to a conduit that would disseminate information, the directives coming in. At the same time, Department of Justice came out with their community relations side. They wanted to make sure that the rights of the people are not violated while the other agencies are enforcing their law enforcement. So we became very active with the DOJ and other law enforcement agencies to make sure that the rights of the people are protected.
And that's a very sensitive issue.
It is a very sensitive issue.
Careful, yes.
And we got involved with the ACLU, and suddenly, of course, CARE was born, and CARE came in very actively, started taking that role. But it was a choice, I think, was made for better reasons than just the professional that I happened to be in that place.
There's a better plan waiting there for you, put you in place for things that, we didn't foresee that was going to happen.
Exactly.
So mashallah that you're able to do that. And you mentioned something very interesting, that you're able to take your current job, your profession, and still you're able to get out there and assist the Muslim community without sort of putting a barrier and say, okay, during the week, Monday to Friday, my profession comes first, and on weekends I'm able to do Islamic activity. You're able to roll it all into one. How do you juggle that?
I would say that I was very fortunate during my student life that I came across some people, and subsequently in my personal life, who became good mentors. When I was in college, I had a professor, Rabbi Tabashnikov. He was a Jewish rabbi, a great human being. Somehow I clicked with him very nicely, and the most controversial issue among the Muslims and Jews, that is Palestine, became the bonding issue between him and I. We both felt very sad and terrible about the tragedy that is happening there, and we both somehow wanted to make that a focus point to really bring us together. And I became a peace activist. Ultimately, that led me to be a nominee for American Jewish Committee, AJC, as a peace activist who traveled to Israel at the height of Intifada. But on one side was Rabbi Tabashnikov, and then Mufti Hassan came here. And Mufti Hassan brought another influence on me, was that openness of Islam to incorporate and embrace other faiths. I heard that there was going to be a neo-Nazi guy who was going to do a demonstration at Holocaust Memorial. It is a very sensitive issue for Jews, and rightfully so.
Right.
And he is going to this place that commemorates the tragedy of Holocaust. And so I called Mufti Hassan. I said, Mufti Sahab, what do you think would be appropriate if I join that counter rally that is being organized by a Jewish community against this one? And Mufti Sahab told me, he says, not only that you should go because Islam tells us to join what is right and support that, but if you don't mind, I would like to come with you. So now here, Mufti Hassan in his typical sherwani, the long tail coat,
Yes,
and
I
the
remember
cap,
him.
and then I am dressed as suit and myself, and here we're standing at
Two
Holocaust,
contrasting images.
Holocaust Memorial, and the Jewish leadership was there, Rabbi Lerman, Rabbi Baumgard, and all, and they're looking strangely at these people. And then suddenly Rabbi Tabashnikov comes. Of course, he knew me, and then he introduced us to all of them. So what I realized, that I can both be an activist for what is good for the humanity, and I can also be an advocate for Islam, because both of us were there as Muslims, but we were supporting a cause that is more endearing to Jews. Why? Because it was a right cause. And therefore, I made that a mission in my life, that whatever I do, I'm going to be inclusive of that. And when you are inclusive of humanity's work, you're part of humanity. So Muslims benefit, regardless. And that has been the slogan in every institution that we promoted. Case in point, the students that work for Project Downtown, they feed almost invariably 100% who are not Muslims. Sahara, when we get victims, they could be Hindu, they could be Sikh, they could be Christian, they could be Muslims. And it became a very interestingly bonding institution for Indians and Pakistanis who are literally otherwise at each other's throats, ready to destroy each other. But this became a point that brought us together. And now together, a number of Indians and Pakistanis and Bangladeshis are advancing to help the victims of domestic violence, women, children, through Sahara. And then when we established Noor Center last year, because Sahara could take care of the court part, counseling part, and everything else, but had no place to put these people. And some of the women that we placed in the mainstream shelters were so traumatized by that experience that they ran back to their abusers because of the cultural shock. So we needed a place of our own, and the Noor Center became the place. When we bought Noor Center, the issue popped up again. Is it going to be for Muslims, or is it going to be
for serve everyone, who's going to benefit?
And interesting thing is that so far almost 100% resources came from Muslims. But we realized that Muslims are marrying non-Muslims, Christians and Jews. and their children. So what are you going to do?
Yeah, they're being integrated into the community.
So you tell them, so no, you can come in, but leave your religion at the door, or you leave your child, or split the children. And in that case, I would compliment Dr. Rabia Khan, and she was so wonderful when she came out and at one of the occasions, and she spoke to our fundraising, and she raised the point that the abuse of women and providing them shelter or support is not a religious issue, it's not a gender issue, it is a human right issue, which is incumbent upon Muslims to really reach out and help in this case, regardless of their faith. We had just bought Noor Center and Eid al-Adha came. And so I just, without thinking much, I made the announcement that if you have any meat, please donate, we'll take care of it. Lo and behold, we got like almost 600 pounds meat. Guess what? It helped at least 15 to 20 families. So ground beef and meat went to them, now who otherwise wouldn't eat meat probably the whole year. So we became again a medium to collect and
for humanity, again, for the community. And I'm glad that you brought that point up, because Islam is about helping the community and humanity, not just focusing on Muslims alone. We do that through, ourselves and better ourselves as Muslims. And part of that process is to get out there and get involved in the community and help wherever the need is, no matter who they are. That's our responsibility as a Muslim, to get out there and help. And I'm glad that you're able to go beyond that barrier, to break down that barrier actually, and get out there and spread the message through the organizations that, we're here to help humanity, whether they're Muslims, non-Muslims, and so on. At this point, very interesting, we're going to be taking a short break and we'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Toyota of Hollywood. No matter what your new car needs are, it's our goal to make every step of your ownership experience as easy as possible. Let our professional, trained sales staff help you find the right car at the right price. Discover an easy ownership experience at Toyota of Hollywood today. We're conveniently located at 1841 North 60th Avenue in Hollywood, Florida.
Will you like to have your events broadcasted live? Contact Al-Hikmat Productions, a full-service video production for Islamic functions, weddings, seminars, etc. For more details, contact Al-Hikmat office, 1-800-804-0267. That's 1-800-804-0267. Eat healthy, eat halal at Ashraf's Halal Meat Center for all your East and West Indian grocery for genuine halal U.S.A. meat. Stop in or call in your orders at 305-654-0195. That's 305-654-0195.
Are you tired of calling cards? Are you fed up of those long PIN numbers? Then use Sensible, international direct calling for cents only. For more details, contact the Al-Hikmat office at 954-986-0158. That's 954-986-0158.
Estate Caribbean Market, East and West Indian grocery for all your halal meats, fish, and vegetables. Call to place your order at 954-961-6160. That's 954-961-6160.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back. If you're now joining me today, my guest is Brother Mohammad Shakir, and we're talking about his involvement in the community. Brother Shakir, we left out talking about, you mentioned Sahara and Noor Center. Why don't you give our viewers a brief history about what Sahara stands for? Because I'm not sure that they're aware of what it is.
In 2002, I received a few phone calls from community members that there are some women here who were either abandoned by their husbands or being violated because of their immigration conditions or whatever other personal reasons, but they are in distress and they need some help.
Muslims, non-Muslims?
Actually, in this case, they were not Muslims.
Okay.
They were not Muslims. And if there is something that we could do, so obviously, being in part of the system, being in the government, I made a few phone calls to different agencies and referred them to the right people.
So let me just cut you across. You were asked in your capacity as your professional, on a professional level, to get involved in the community.
Exactly.
I see. Okay.
When I say call to my office,
right.
That means as a director of Asian affairs, and these were of course Asian families, and so I made a few phone calls and referred them to the appropriate agencies. And next thing you know, that this 1-2 phone calls led to, within like about few months, I got like about 25, 30 phone calls. Similar phone calls.
Wow.
So the word started to get around and people started seeking help. And then I realized that my office is not geared for something like that. I also happened to be on a grant panel with a colleague, Sophie Brion. Sophie was with the Women's Fund of Miami. So I picked up the phone and I called Sophie. I said, Sophie, I have this problem. Is there any possibility that we could establish an organization exclusive to deal with Asians or South Asians? Sophie, who is a very perky, very hyper, extremely intelligent and wonderful person. Right now she's at Harvard University doing some postdoctoral work. She just jumped. She said, what a great idea, let's do it. We needed a third partner who could actually do the counseling part, so I picked up the phone and called Dr. Jagdish, who, her husband was a colleague of mine at Berry University, and I knew that she's a psychotherapist, and Dr. Jagdish said, fine, it's a good idea. So all three of us came together and Sahara was born.
Founded.
Sahara actually is a word in Urdu, Hindi, which comes, I think, from Sanskrit, means a helping hand or support. So Sahara was formed. Originally we wanted to have the word Sati. Sati means companion, but Dr. Jagdish said that people may misinterpret as Sati or burning of women on fire, and it may pose more
religious connotation
more complication for us. So we settled for Sahara, and Sahara was born in 2004 officially. And since 2004 to this day, Sahara receives the phone call. It has a website, www.saharaofflorida.org. And you can call in, and a volunteer will call and take your intake information, and then you will be processed. And will be provided whatever help you need. If you need help with the counseling or legal assistance or immigration, we'll determine the needs, and based on that
we'll able to guide families through the whole process and meet their needs.
Right. And that's how Sahara was born, and has worked for almost 6, 7 years until we finally found a place to put Sahara in to rest.
So now
in
you have
one
an
place.
office.
You have an office.
You have an office. Good.
And in the beginning, the first 2 clients were Indians, Hindus, and now the tides have turned. Now, unfortunately, majority of the clients, almost 90% of the clients are Muslims, most of them from India, Bangladesh, and Pakistan.
And that's interesting that you mentioned that, because I know in our community, our Asian community, even the Caribbean community, it's considered to be taboo to even go out there and talk about, your problems within the home. So it's interesting that 90% of your current clients now are from a Muslim background.
Well, it is a taboo. Also, there was a fear factor. The women were so vulnerable, they did not know that once they exposed, they would be subjected to more suffering if proper help is not afforded them. But now that networking is happening within the community, through mosques, through temples, through gurdwaras, through other religious institutions, they're finding out that no, they're not alone.
They're not the only ones.
Right. If they really truly go out and seek help, the helping people will make sure that their safety is guaranteed and they're not left out on the street. Oh, you wouldn't believe it, but first few women were found sitting in the bus stop at 12 o'clock at night.
Wow.
And the gentleman who was driving, he spotted the girl, and he said, looks like an Asian girl. So he turned around. He thought it was a Pakistani. He was Pakistani. He turned around and came and asked, why are you sitting here? And the girl started crying. So then he found out that she is from India, and the in-laws had thrown her out in the middle of the night.
Right.
And then she's sitting at the bus stop. So in situations like that, they would be frightened to even raise voice to what may they may end up with.
And where do they turn? Who do they go to? Right. There's no resource out there for them to provide that safety net, because it's really
usually
traumatic.
The abusers are very smart.
Yeah.
They keep their victims isolated. They are not connected to the community. Another case that we found out, which is very interesting, that a number of women who are now coming, they don't come from major urban areas back home in India or Pakistan. They come from smaller areas. So because major urban areas already have a community here, there are people who are from those cities, so they can connect with them. But these ladies or girls really are not hooked up or connected to the community here too. And that tells you why it is so important to have a community, have people part of an institution, come to a mosque, come to a cultural center, come to a community center. So you are actually hooked up with others. So you have a support system.
And that it's important for us, at least for Sahara and similar organizations, to get out there to the Muslim communities to let them know they need to advocate. They need to let the community out there know, because you don't know what goes on inside people's home unless it really gets to a point where they can't take it anymore, and then who do they have to turn to? They need to know what direction. You know, they're not going to come out and say, hey, look, I have a problem, what do I do? They're going to be very discreet about it, especially in our community. So as an organization as Sahara, how do you go about educating the people out there who may have these underlying problems very discreetly?
We are available, and we look for the opportunity that if any institution invites, we send volunteers or trainers who will speak, who will make the presentations, will educate the people.
And again, you work with the Muslim and the non-Muslim community as well.
Muslims and non-Muslims both. We also I like to stress upon something that Muslims should remember. Muslims, if they really want to practice true Islam, they should not only know their faith, the basics, they should also know their history. Because otherwise you'll practice a religion that is only textbook, that is not real. All the wives of Prophet ﷺ, with the exception of Aisha radiallahu anha, were divorced women. Some of them did suffer. Some of them had problems. So speaking about a problem in a decent, good manners, Islamic way, there's nothing wrong with that. There's no taboo. The taboo part came from other traditions. Taboo part came from the other religions or practices that they wanted to subject women to all the repression and suffering and persecute them. So for a Muslim woman to speak out that, look, I have a problem, I need help, there is nothing there is no taboo about it. There's nothing wrong about it.
And that's why we need to educate them to know that, because the certain cultures teaches them that it's wrong for them to go out there. They need to stay, you know, that's personal, they need to stay within the home, and that's the culture, not the Islamic part that comes out.
Absolutely.
And Muslim women are not oppressed, and I'm glad that you mentioned that, because it's important for our viewers to know that Muslim women are not oppressed in Islam.
No, they're not, and again, they can attain their independence and speak in their voice by being active, and not only that they should speak for their own rights, but they should also speak for the rights of their fellow sisters.
Others, yes.
In humanity, not just Islam. They should look for them, and if any way they can do it, I think that's a very Islamic cause, if they advance it that way.
That's very good. Now you also mentioned the Noor Center. Is that affiliated with Sahara?
Well, Noor Center, Sahara since 2004 until last year, was able to provide all kinds of assistance, but no temporary housing, no shelter. And a few women that we placed in shelters suffered a cultural shock. Because
you mean shelters such as Women in Distress with the
right,
okay,
mainstream shelter institution, where they have all women, and consequently they decided to return back to their abuser.
Oh.
And we realized it later on. Then we started putting them with families and friends.
Yes.
But what happens is, despite of the generosity of the host family, a person who is staying there overnight doesn't know what time I'm going to get up, what time they're going to leave, what to have to do, and therefore they were still as edgy and restless about the whole environment, and were not completely at ease, and therefore we realized that there is a need for us to have a place of our own. So last year, alhamdulillah, we were able to acquire a house, and I'm sure that you had the visit.
Yes, I was very fortunate to have the opportunity to visit that.
And this was it was a distressed property. Now we are slowly rehabbing it. It is nice, and it's getting better. And
it's undercover. Yes.
And I just like to share with you that as we speak, it is to the full capacity occupied now, right? Yesterday we got another batch, and it is now complete. We're full, and therefore it tells you that there is a need out there. I must say that we had difficulty trying to sell this idea because people cannot visualize. It was abstract, but since we established it, the support is coming from every direction, and it's an outpouring. Just yesterday I sent an email that, look, with the full capacity now, we're finding out that laundry is becoming very expensive. Any generous donors out there who could give us washer and dryer? Before I could go to sleep last night, I got a confirmation that, don't worry, I'll put it. This morning somebody met me at Masjid, and he says, well, I got a phone call to provide your your washer and dryer, so tell me about the space. So this is happening, and people should realize when they contribute to causes like this is an ajr jariyah. This is they're really committing for the well-being of future generations, because a child raised with a woman who is traumatized will grow up be traumatized. Or if,
exactly, the cycle continues.
Yeah, or if he grows up in an abusive environment, he's going to grow up and become an abuser.
And that brings us to my final question. How can the community get involved to assist you with these many projects, Sahara and Noor Center specifically?
Right now, Muslims have a number of projects going on, and they all need help. We have U.S.A. Medical Clinic. Our victims, when we bring them in Sahara and Noor Center, we send them immediately for physical examination, so their medical file is complete. Right. Then we have Sahara that helps people with the women in distress. Then we have Noor Center that places, and they're all available information. You can call any mosque, you can get the information, or you can call my number. I'll be happy to give you my office, and my office actually is a Dade County website that you can find. My office number is 305-375-1570.
Right. At the end of the program, we're going to post all the numbers and the organizations. So viewers will have
these organizations actually are out there to serve the community. These organizations can use a number of volunteers. They can use donors. They can use experts. We are looking for therapists, counselors, everyday lay workers, people to man phone lines. So all these things come together. We've been just fortunate that we've had enough help just to tug along, and we'll do as much help as we can get. But if Muslims really want to create major institutions, they're going to have to personally get involved.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's what we'd like to appeal to our viewers, to get involved in the community. We heard so many projects that Brother Shakir is a part of, and it's important for you to get involved in the community and be a part of the healing process and help humanity as a whole. So thank you so much for being my guest today, Brother Shakir. It certainly was a pleasure having you on the program. Actually, it was an honor having you on the program, because I know you're quite busy.
Thank you very much.
And that brings us to the end of our program. Please join us again next week for another edition of Who's Who in America and the Community, where you meet ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Until then, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Subhanallah, Subhanallah, Hamdan Lillah, Hamdan Lillah, wa la ilaha illallah, wa la ilaha illallah, Wallahu Akbar, Wallahu Akbar. Subhanallah, Subhanallah, Hamdan Lillah, Hamdan Lillah, wa la ilaha illallah, wa la ilaha illallah, Wallahu Akbar, Wallahu